Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jason Kirk picking some college football games for OddsChecker here in mid-December. Let us get directly to it. I am taking Minnesota plus 10.5 against Nebraska. Minnesota's not a good team, but there's some factors to consider here. They have had 49 players out at one point or another this year, 2 games canceled. Everything seemingly under control at this point. They had a little bit of a reset heading into their final game. They have the challenge of scoring points without star receiver Rashad Bateman. There is a chance they can mitigate this. They have been decent at staying on the field, the ground game with Muhammad Ibrahim. Pretty solid at avoiding setbacks. They love to run on first and second down anyway, and then they try to throw on third down. They have one of the most extreme rates in the country as far as the disparity goes there. And that is key because without Bateman, you really need to be solid on first and second down. Fortunately for Minnesota, Nebraska's defense has been really bad at getting teams off the field, one of the lowest 3-and-out percentages in the country. Also, I think Minnesota's special teams really struggled in general, and there's an argument that getting back all that depth, all those players having a little bit more practice time, maybe that makes special teams a little bit less of a liability for you. Minnesota win in Lincoln, probably a lot to ask, but we're going for a competitive shootout. Both teams should play hard, close out their seasons, with a rivalry type game, and we're on the friendly side of 10 points. So if it ends up 40-30, we're all set. Next, taking Navy plus 7 against Army. And yes, Army has been the better team on the year. There's no question about that. But if we want Navy to come within a touchdown, let's know this. Navy's last 2 games, both after a long layoff. Remember, they started their year with that experimental practice situation that did not work. They looked horrible against BYU, and they struggled to sort of catch up. Well, now they've had some time. Their last 2 games against quite good Memphis and Tulsa teams, they managed to turn those into really low-scoring games where, one weird play could have ended up making the difference. Let's also note, Army-Navy is pretty much always closer than it should be for a lot of reasons, one being that these 2 teams usually have a tactical advantage, a surprise advantage, against teams that aren't familiar with the flexbone option offense. Well, both of these defenses in Army-Navy are extremely familiar with the flexbone option offense. They practice against it all year long. Look at Army's game this year against the Citadel, an FCS option team. It's only a 14-9 win for Army. So Navy could absolutely show up and look competitive here. 8 of the last 11 years, the Army-Navy underdog has, in fact, covered by my count, depending on where you find your number. Also, both teams this year are probably a little bit better at defense than at offense. Both defenses are decent at stopping explosive plays, and that's against normal offenses. And both offenses have really had to grind it out, even by flexbone standards. And when you're a team like this, you count on 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. Defense gets frustrated, mad, makes a mistake, and boom, 60-yard play. Well, these teams are going to be disciplined at this offense. We literally might not see any 30, 40-yard plays all game long. Let's keep it low scoring. Let's call it 17, 13, something like that. Navy covers. And in fact, let's double down on that. Let's also go ahead and grab Army-Navy under. I got it at 41.5. I've seen it as low as 38 now. And I would consider 38 as well. There is, both teams this year, not a lot of explosive plays, pretty good at limiting them. There is a massive long-term trend here. Depending on the numbers, as many as 14 years in a row, Army-Navy has gone under. Vegas' power rating struggled for a long time to figure out what to do with this clock-burning offense. And they've caught on to some degree. That total each year has gone down from the 50s to the 40s, and now it's in the 30s. It was 38.5 2 years ago, and in fact, it hit the under at only 27 points. So, until it stops working, yeah. And also, it might be a little bit rainy, so you're going to see some fumbles in this game. Let us also take, this is a little bit of a risky one, USC minus 2.5 against UCLA. We're betting against the grain here. Everyone has been coming in UCLA's favor, I think, for a few reasons. UCLA has been a lot better than expected this year. USC is on a short week. They had to play on Sunday against Wazoo. USC has a few injuries. They lost a safety. Quarterback's a little bit banged up. Valid concerns, and I definitely would not like this quite as much if it was on the other side of that key number, that field goal. USC is the stronger team. Hasn't had to travel for several weeks. The game is across town. UCLA was at Arizona State last week, so I think that might mitigate the short week somewhat. And I also think there's a little bit of a sample size thing here. UCLA has had a couple more good games than expected, and USC has struggled a time or two more than expected. But we've only had 4 or 5 games each. You know, we can look at this as if it's a normal December, and we know these teams really well. But it's more like they're playing in September, right? Because that's when we usually have the sample size where we don't know these teams all that well. And I think we can look and say like UCLA's run defense has been really strong. USC can't really run the ball all that well, right? If you look at the raw numbers, if you look at the success rates, I think there's a chance USC could get some consistent ground game going because they have generated, decent steady gains on the ground this year. UCLA has been good at limiting the explosive runs, but have given up a number of 3, 4, 5, 6 yard type games. So all we need is under a field goal to cover. UCLA could look great, look competitive, and we could still pull out the cover. UNLV finally plus 21.5. Yes, UNLV is terrible. But they haven't been getting worse. We got that going for us. Arguably, some very slight improvement over the course of the year. Hawaii is, bad, not particularly improving. Haven't had a really strong game since week 1. Hawaii's defense really struggles with efficiency, with letting teams extend drives. And that is almost literally the only thing UNLV is decent at and has any ambition of being good at. They run the ball until it finally works. They're slow, they're conservative. One other trend in our favor here is it's easy to look at the distance teams have to travel to Hawaii, conclude that is, that's got to take a psychological toll. But over the last 5, 10, 15 years, however you want to slice it, Hawaii actually underperforms against the spread at home. So we build it up in our minds to be a bigger thing than it actually turns out to be for players. Just treat it like a normal stadium. Let's say we're able to get something like Hawaii 40, UNLV 21, something like that. This line has since fallen in our favor. It's down to 20 as of recording, so that would still cover there as well. I'd consider that number. I wouldn't be as excited as I am about over 3 touchdowns, but still a pretty decent number. Thank you. Those are my picks for this week in college football.